produced program. The views expressed are those of the guests and not necessarily those of the producer. Today's topic:
Terrorist on Trial in Passion for Truth award-winning program.
Welcome to another edition of Passion for Truth. Hundreds of enemy combatants continue to be held in U.S. custody at Guantanamo Bay and other secret U.S. prisons. Should they be tried and convicted in civilian courts? And what about those who are absolutely innocent? All next with our panelist, Dr. Joseph Annunziata, with expertise on international affairs. As a former professor, Dr. Annunziata was an advisor to the Assistant Secretary of Defense on international issues. He was also a senior staff member at the White House. Dr. Amarjit Singh, Director, Voices for Freedom, also a columnist for several newspapers. Chuck Woolery, formerly from the World Federalist Association. The objective of the World Federalist Association is to strengthen UN. Sherry Gossett, Managing Editor of the New Individualist magazine. And Dr. Syed Ali Wasif, President, Society for International Reforms and Research. Welcome you all. Starting with you, Joe, is it practical to allow hundreds of defendants to enter U.S. courts?
Yes, I think it is. First of all, I think they need to screen them to see if there are any, is there any evidence that would even justify their going to court. But once they have shown the proof that that these are liable to being tried in the court, then I think they should go to the courts, yes.
Dr. Singh, have we strengthened the belief in third world countries, leaders, in people that it's okay to commit acts of savagery and secrecy? If U.S. can do it, we can do it too.
I think post 9/11 scenario, and particularly the developments in the United States and around the world, have harmed firstly the freedom struggles, as even genuine freedom struggles has been clubbed under terrorism, and there is no difference between our terrorism and freedom struggle. And when it comes to holding people illegally, like in India, in the past 23 years, what Sikhs experienced, still there are 6 youngsters in jails of Naba and Patiala where they are being held for 20 years. Even the trial dates are not set. But now what has happened in this country has not only strengthened them, rather even on the human rights issue, the moral high ground we have lost. While on the international forums we used to come up with that ban this country, economical sanctions should be there, it's violating human rights. So certainly it has not only strengthened now the third world countries or even the other countries around the world. They can say, all right, if the main champion of human rights, United States, can do it, who is there to ask us? We can do it too.
What's your take? Is the U.S. obligated to live by the Geneva Convention treaty or in the treatment of enemy combatants?
I would hope so. You know, I agree with follow-up on what Dr. Singh said, that humanity right now is at a very critical point in our evolution, and that is, will we continue to use war as a solution, or will we turn to the rule of law, to our higher sense of what's just and what's fair, and use law? And my fear is that after 9/11, Americans kind of went back a little ways, and we took up war again, and justified going beyond the rule of law, to killing innocent people. If they're collateral damage, it's okay. By imprisoning people, by torturing them without a trial, it's okay. Just this one time. And I think it was a huge mistake, and I think we're going to pay the price for it. And I would hope that we would reverse the processes with a new president in the future, and we'll see what happens.
Should they be tried in civilian courts?
Here's one of the big problems. In Iraq, and there was an article in National Review magazine about this, conservative magazine, they went in and they swept up any number of Sunnis and put them into Abu Ghraib. In a similar situation, they were considered enemy combatants. And yet, when they went in that situation, we had a lack of translators. It was very difficult to know exactly what was going on. You had neighbors taking out grudges by saying, go into this family's house, they're an enemy, so on and so forth. This was done on a mass scale. So many conservatives made the mistake of saying, for example, Abu Ghraib, well, we were just getting back at the terrorists. This was repeated over and over and over again. And they never acknowledged the fact that you have all these sorts of people gathered up. I don't see how it makes sense to keep people in limbo in Guantanamo indefinitely. What kind of status do they have? We have to pay to keep them there. We have to pay to feed them, and yet we also say we can't pay for them all to have lawyers. this doesn't really make sense. The stalemate has got to be broken sometime.
Dr. Ali, where do you stand on this, on the enemy combatants?
Well, as far as the legality of this enemy combatant status is concerned, I am with the U.S. government. So they are terrorists. You have to distinguish between the terrorist combatants and the formations under the Taliban regime. So they are not combatants. They are not POWs. They are some formations, some kind of formations. So Taliban and Al-Qaeda are two different entities and should be treated as such, number one. The second is whoever involved in terrorism loses his right to the terms and conditions mentioned in Geneva Conventions and the Hague Conventions. So, number three, the Taliban, for instance, who were fighting under a government, do enjoy certain privileges under the banner of international law, that is, Geneva Conventions. However, they do not enjoy the status of POWs mentioned in those conventions.
Joe, do you agree with this premise?
No. I think that under our own Constitution, and the American Constitution is held up worldwide as a good example of rule of law. Under the Constitution, if somebody is charged with a crime, whether it be combatant or whether it be killing somebody on the street, terrorist, you are entitled to be charged with some kind of an offense. And you are entitled to be charged fairly quickly. You cannot rot in prison for 5 years and never have anyone bring up what is the problem. What did you do? And once you are charged, then to have a speedy trial. Bring forth the evidence for or against. If the evidence is convincing, then the person should suffer. But if there's not sufficient evidence, the person goes free.
But
you are innocent in our system. You are innocent until you are proven guilty.
But that's an administrative matter rather than the legal. I was pinpointing the legal aspect of this issue. You are talking about the administrative.
Legally, you cannot be. That's why we wrote the American Constitution, because prior to that, in England, they gathered people up and said, "We don't like the way you look. We think you're guilty. Therefore, we're going to put you in prison. You're not even going to have a chance to defend yourself."
Yeah, but we are talking about international law, and American Constitution recognizes the supremacy of international law over the U.S. law.
I'm not sure about that. We can talk about that too.
But nowhere in international law is terrorism effectively defined. So when you start to talk about legal terms, you know, it should be a very finite, measured, scientific application of law, where when you come up with the word terrorist and you start labeling somebody a terrorist, that's extremely nebulous. There is no agreed-upon definition of terrorism.
I would disagree with that, because I've seen documents from the UN where terrorism is explicitly defined and very clearly defined. So I don't think it's a problem that it's a nebulous thing, but I'll go back to one of the concerns I had stated, is that you are sweeping up innocent people in this, and we already know this. And the fears that people have are, if this continues, then we get into some type of, God forbid, totalitarian presidency in the United States, and they could pick up anybody for any reason, not because you're a terrorist, because you wrote something or you said something you shouldn't have said. The other issue that I have a big problem with is the hypocrisy of the press. They portray these sorts of things as a uniquely Bush problem, like the extraordinary rendition. Well, guess what? Rendition's not quite so extraordinary, because Clinton did it during the Bosnia conflict. He sent somebody out of Bosnia back to Egypt to be tortured, and so let's just be a little bit equitable about this.
That doesn't make it right.
I didn't say that it made it right. I said it made it hypocritical for the press to ignore those types of things and focus on this as though it's completely new, extraordinary rendition.
And I think one point which I like to point out, that in Pakistan, when we are talking about conflict of judiciary with the President Musharraf's regime, we'll have to look at that how it was triggered. Actually, Chief Justice Muhammad Iftikhar, he directed the police to produce those very people, those